Islands of Adventure. It's a groundbreaking park, full of details from everywhere you look. The architecture, the sounds of music, and the vibe. It was truly a 21st century theme park. And it was. There have been a lot of creative consultants for Islands of Adventure, and the uniqueness of creativity. Scott Trowbridge and his advanced Marvel Superhero Island Land, Lisa Girolami with the colorful and no straight line of Seuss Landing, Bob Schride and the immersive detail world of Jurassic Park, and filmmakers that created The Boy That Lived of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, making the films come to life like never before. But I think there is one more land that also fits in that bubble, and that would have to be Toon Lagoon. Well, yes, the cartoon characters featured in the land are not recognized in the slightest. But there's a comic strip story waiting to happen that's never been told. And today, I'm going to be telling you the tale of Toon Lagoon. Grab your popcorns ready and get excited. And maybe put on your Mountie hats, as this is a deep dive of the comic strip called Toon Lagoon.
Brumille is here, and I ain't no rube. I make things happen on the tube. So, rub your hands and pat your tummies. It's time for those fantastic funnies.
Do it now.
Before we begin, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that way you won't miss any amusement park related videos, like this one. Our goal this year is to hopefully reach around 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it would be honored to have you as one of my subscribers on this channel. So what are you waiting for? Become a member today!
The Future, the movie, is now Back to the Future, the amusement ride at Universal Studios in Florida. And Marty McFly, a.k.a. Michael J. Fox himself, was on hand for the dedication, and so was our own Bill Tush.
Our comic strip story begins in 1991, where Universal Studios was finally getting attendance, when Back to the Future, the ride, opened up on that same year, which was a critical success for the resort. This was really needed after the failure of its grand opening in 1990.
The ride will not be open today now.
Any chance that it's going to be open by Saturday?
We did not know as of yet when it's scheduled to be open.
Hi, how
Since
are you?
2 opening day attractions opened back up and running, in attendance were increasing because of Back to the Future, the ride. Universal executives were eyeing on Disney, since the CEO of Disney at the time, Michael Eisner, decided to copy everything that was originally planned for Universal Studios Florida, and made it its own original idea, which came Disney's MGM Studios, better known as today as Disney's Hollywood Studios. Disney was not done yet. No, sir. They were about to build new attractions and new hotels for the decade of the 1990s. Michael Eisner took it seriously. This prompted Universal to think of an idea. They need to find a way to kill its competitor. Tom Williams, who was originally the president and CEO of the Parks and Resorts for Universal, thought of an idea on possibly expanding it to be a resort destination in Orlando. This was a direct response to Eisner and the executives. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this means war. A lot of the executives took on of this and thought it would be a brilliant idea to do. It would be the most ultimate weapon yet. The resort complex would be called Universal City, Florida, which would feature an all-new second gate. But what did Tom Williams and the executives had in mind? Were they thinking crazy? Were they thinking a little bit loony? Were they thinking about a bogus concept? Meanwhile, Universal was looking into an IP they can put for their second gate. One IP struck to them. That's right, Universal was wowed by Jay Ward's awesome and amazing creations, responsible for creating the Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, and other things under his belt. The show began in 1959 and ran through 1964. Even after its cancellation, the show still became recognizable in cartoon history, and was very unique for the time. Not only was it fun for kids, but adults as well. The characters were so easy to resonate to, and the unique style was so easy to resonate. It was clear that the train would never stop through the early half of the 1990s, especially when they were airing reruns on cable networks. So Universal felt it was a perfect opportunity to swoop it in, to buy out the theme park rights. For plans for future development, Jay Ward Productions agreed, and the deal was finalized in 1991. Meanwhile, they finally found the idea for their second theme park, titled Cartoon World, and trademarked on August 26, 1991, where all the cartoons live, containing Jay Ward, Warner Brothers, Dr. Seuss, and I wonder what Universal can bring next to the table. Will Universal ever pick another IP land to pick for their new cartoon world? Or will they have to go with the already existing IPs they already have? Guess we'll have to find out on our next episode of Will Universal be able to pick an IP? Or go where nothing?
My turn.
My toy. This new Popeye video game has the boys fighting worse than ever. Oh, Popeye. It's my game. It's got 3 screens just like the arcade. Watch out! Yikes!
Uh-oh. Fight like a man.
Where's me spinach? Yow!
You choke, you wimp.
I ain't wimpy. I'm much better looking.
New Popeye video game available for most popular home video and computer systems.
Popeye. Universal found themselves in the idea of finding Popeye a great fit for Cartoon World. Why not? He's a cartoon. made by E.C. Segar. The character started off as a comic strip in 1929, which later turned into a cartoon star, with the help of Fleischer Studios. Popeye immediately became so popular than Mickey Mouse, almost overnight. It became one of the most popular cartoons of all time, even in Americana. So to have an opportunity on having Popeye being in their second gate sounded like a smart choice. The reason was simple. A, the character is well known. B, America knows who Popeye is. And C, more capitalism and revenue. The entrance of Cartoon World would have depicted a cartoon studio, feeling straight out of Roger Rabbit. Personally, the concept art is really cool, with flying planes on top of the light-up building structure. In the trademark of September 2nd, 1992, the town that you enter inside was called Comic Strip Lane. And what you're seeing right now is a full concept art of the street. And there's a lot to take in. First off, we have a Warner Brothers store on the right-hand side. We also see trolleys as well, taking passengers through the town of Comic Strip Lane. To the left, we see some form of a Mr. Magoo store. We also see a blimp as well reading, "Welcome to Comic Strip Lane." And there is just so much to take in here, but we have to move on. Cartoon World was already starting to sail down the high seas, until it hit by an iceberg, when Universal didn't get the rights for Warner Brothers, since they were giving out a 10% royalty, instead of Universal's offer for 8% royalty. And the deal fell through. It was very tragic for Universal, and nearly crushed their hearts, since it was one of the big corporations that they wanted to include. Already, this was a major loss for Universal, but luckily for them, a new property was on the rise. Jurassic Park was a massive box office success. Not only that it was critically acclaimed by so many people, but it got an Oscars nomination. Yeah, this also prompted Universal to make a Jurassic Park ride, even before the movie came out. Now, how do dinosaurs have anything to do with the Toon Lagoon, perhaps? Don't worry, we're getting there. Originally, they wanted to use Jurassic Park for Universal Studios Florida, but ultimately this fell through, and decided to put Jurassic Park into their second gate instead. This is because they found it to be a perfect place to put it. But then Universal forgot something. The second gate was all about different forms of media of cartoons, and Jurassic Park didn't really have anything to do with cartoons, besides the Mr. DNA scene in the movie, which was a problem. Thus, they had to kill the Cartoon World concept. Wah, wah, wah. Since the concept was starting to not look good anyhow. But this didn't stop Universal from giving up on cartoon gags and humor. Instead, they found the idea to ultimately make the Cartoon World concept a land instead. So around November 1st, 1993, by trademark, was now named Cartoon Land, in development through this time.
This expansive new resort complex will be called Universal City, Florida.
How about this, huh?
Include additional sound stages, it will be designed so that all elements are a very substantial enhancement of Universal's existing production facilities and backlot sets. Now, this will add greatly to the already extensive production facilities in our fine state.
Then, around 1993, Universal City, Florida was officially announced to the general public. Shockingly, they didn't really announce a whole lot of details about the second theme park, and mainly explained about new jobs, how Jurassic Park would be a part of the second gate, 5 hotels, and a 12-acre nightlife, dining, and shopping district, sports facilities, which will have an 18-hole golf course and 7,000-seat tennis facility, several new sound stages for movies and television, and finally an 8,000 space parking garage, and also transportation for boats and people movers. Yes, people movers. Let me repeat that again. People movers. This new entertainment resort will cost $3 billion at the time. While they didn't really explain too much about what they were planning, Steven Spielberg said, quote, "It would consist of 20 events or rides, and it will take people to the edges of their imagination." Spielberg also said, quote, "We can't disclose what kind of rides are under development for competitive reasons, but they will be state-of-the-art," said Spielberg, unquote. This project would be $3 billion, which will be about $7 billion today. Ron Benson, chairman of MCA Recreation Service Group, said, quote, "that we are building a city here. What it's going to be look like in another matter." This would be all finished originally in 1995, but however, it got pushed back to either 1998 or 1999 respectively. Spielberg also said that we came into the competitive environment here and won. I'm not making this up. I don't know what Steven Spielberg is on, but wow. That's crazy. Enough about that. Anyways, referring to Disney's MGM Studios theme park, we've outgrossed them. So that gives us tremendous confidence for the future. Don't worry, I'm not laughing at Universal, I just found it funny. MCA Chairman Lou Wasserman said, quote, "The second theme park, hotels, convention facilities, and other attractions at Universal City, Florida would mean we'll be going head-to-head just like we've done with Disney in California for 25 years. Steve Baker said about this new resort complex, stating, "We might see a Pepsi-Cola and Cola type war." Back to the concept phase, ultimately, with Jurassic Park joining the mix, they decided on October 12, 1993, on the trademark that they changed Cartoon World into Universal's Isles of Adventure. At first, before they ultimately decided to change it on November 10, 1993, as Universal's Islands of Adventure.
So you know the story that the whole thing was going to be Cartoon World. That was the original design of Islands, and so thank God that it didn't do that, because that would have been a relentless journey, wouldn't it? And then you can't add to it. You can't add a King Kong and a Harry Potter and all that stuff. So it was genius to come up with, and it was Phil Hedema, to come up with islands where you get to go to different islands, and there's this actual separation of each one. And so it just that's got adventure written all over it. You know, of course, Disneyland had, zones and stuff, but not like islands where you get to go and travel to each different one. That raises the entertainment bar. The truth is that the customers wanted a thrill park. That's really what this all comes from. And as you can see, everybody responded to that. Disney has thrill parks. Everybody has a thrill park. You have to put in some to bring in the tweens and interest them. And at the time, Universal Studios didn't really have anything exciting like for the tweens. And then Islands did.
Meanwhile, in Cartoon Land's development for Islands of Adventure, changes were made in 1994. Universal decided to change the name once again, so two names had to be chosen. This happened in the trademark of September 26, 1994. The first name that they thought of was Cartoon Lagoon, while the other was none other than Toon Lagoon. At the time, they decided to go with Cartoon Lagoon at first. Through this time, they went through a lot of cartoon attraction concepts, including The Simpsons, UPA, Nickelodeon, The Peanuts, Land Before Time, Hanna-Barbera, and Mighty Mouse, were all planned but ultimately never passed the approval phase. Let me know if you want me to go through these concepts in a separate video. However, in 1994, Universal officially announced that Popeye and the gang would be coming to Islands of Adventure. This was announced on Saturday in Chester, Illinois, in the comic strip artist's hometown. A 100th birthday celebration for celebrating the character's late creator, E.C. Segar. Mainly, this was at the time, in 1994. The Saturday announcement featured a parade with 60 floats and 20 marching bands, set the tone for the announcement. The final aspect, to close off the deal, Universal decided to present the famous spinach swinging sailor with the world's largest single private cans of spinach, with the first portion being sent off to charity in Chester, Illinois. Benson said, quote, Popeye was a tough negotiator and was real persistent on the spinach steel point, which we are more than happy to deliver. We're additionally gratified that this creative teaming with King Features Syndicate will support charities and provide thousands of needy individuals with Popeye-fueled spinach boost. Joseph F. D'Angelo, president of King Features Syndicate, said, quote, the company was very pleased that Popeye, an internationally acclaimed cartoon for decades and the first cartoon character ever immortalized in public sculpture, would now be immortalized forever in Universal's 21st century state-of-the-art theme park, unquote. Ron Benson said, quote, Popeye's town of Sweethaven will be built for the sailor and his pals. These are very rich characters, unquote. D'Angelo also stated that it has been a print continuously since Segar created the character in 1929, but only about 100 newspapers carried the strip domestically. He said, and another 100 overseas in animated form. D'Angelo also said, Popeye is popular on cable TV, but revenue from licensing appears to be the key for King. Ron Benson mentioned about Popeye saying, quote, Popeye's legacy will continue to live on in Chester, and his presence at Universal's Islands of Adventure at Universal City, Florida will bring him to life for millions of fans from around the world. When you combine Popeye's enduring worldwide popularity with Universal's proven ability to previously succeed themes using cutting-edge technology to produce unparalleled entertainment experiences, you perceive the international appeal we plan to offer through Universal City, Florida, unquote. While she can't really say much about the rides and attractions, Universal spokeswoman Linda Buckley did mention that water is likely to surround the islands and other attractions throughout Universal City, Florida. Now, why am I not mentioning about the attractions yet? Well, I am going to probably talk about their development when we talk about the offerings of Toon Lagoon. But, back on topic, it was still Cartoon Lagoon at the time. In 1995, a magazine talking about Seuss Landing had mentions of the other islands, but what really caught my attention was the first press appearance name or mention of Cartoon Lagoon, so it was clear that somehow Universal did plan on wanting to use that name. Personally, this is what I can basically find about the name, as there's other evidence such as a trademark and on Scott Sherman's website. Moving on in development stages, they realized that Cartoon Lagoon, the name, would be changed once again. This time, they looked back into their September 26, 1994 trademark, Toon Lagoon. They decided to use that name instead. It was very clear executives didn't want to try to look for third parties to fit this new cartoon land, since most of these concepts were ultimately shelved because companies have the theme parks rights in other places or didn't feel the need on doing the theme park rights for them. Thus, with a lot of trial and error, they decided to stick to what they already have and decided to run with it. The idea was simple. They decided to use already existing assets. Universal realized that they got the theme park rights for Popeye. They didn't realize how many comic strip characters are owned by the exact same company. To use those comic strip characters in the land. Now, pre-existing assets is very common in theme parks when there's something in development. A couple examples I can think of is Disney planning a Dick Tracy ride called Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers and would use a new ride system technology, which was implemented in Indiana Jones Temple of the Forbidden Eye at Disneyland. Or how about the Superman ride would be changed into the classic and well-beloved The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man and use assets from the ride system that they had in mind. Sometimes nothing goes to waste, and Universal executives didn't want to have the cartoon world dead in the water, and they strongly believe that they wanted to use cartoons and comic strips in their second gates. In theme parks, that's reincarnation. When there is something planned, yes, it is very different, but the ideas remain even if it's different, and their vision is still there. In 1996, the $3 billion Universal City, Florida started under construction. It was truly exciting, as hopes were high for this new resort. Not only did the second gate was also under construction, but so too the new parking garage.
The moving walkway exit is approaching.
And the golf course.
Joe overcompensated for his slice and hooked it. Something we'll be sure to work on next time.
And the new hotels. And the new nightlife entertainment complex. Universal wanted to be a success. A true beauty of success. A never before seen success. The king of success. Totally good green eggs and ham success. And a non-Disney success. They got the show producer, Chris Stapleton, to do the full story of Toon Lagoon, and Stapleton also worked on other attractions as a Parisian production designer. He worked at attractions such as Alfred Hitchcock, The Art of Making Movies, Murder, She Wrote post-production, Beetlejuice Graveyard Review, and Animal Actors, just to name a few. Also helping out a little bit would be Mark Woodbury, who is now the current Chief Executive Officer over at Universal Destination Experiences, or back then as Universal Creative, who also helped work on this new technologically advanced theme park.
Hi, I'm Mark Woodbury, President of Universal Creative. First, thank you so much for being fans of Universal Orlando Resort. We're truly grateful to have some of the most amazing fans in the universe.
Whoa. Hold on, Mark Woodbury. So here's the thing. You are a great CEO, but you didn't have any creative involvement too much with Toon Lagoon. I'm so sorry. You're not the main focus here. I'm so sorry. I don't mean the bad news, but I hate to be the bad news here, but I can't wait to see what your next future holds, Mark Woodbury. Honestly, I can't wait to see what you guys create. Honestly, you got to make a lot of great projects. So, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to let you go off of this history video. I'm so sorry. Then, in March 1997, Universal decided to build a $2 million preview center near the New York section of the current Universal Studios Florida. Ultimately, this happened, and Universal pulled it off with a bang.
2, 1. The countdown to Universal's newest theme park, Islands of Adventure, is on. Today, park officials unveiled plans for what it calls the most technologically advanced theme park ever created.
While we're talking about the preview center, let's mention the Toon Lagoon setup to promote the land that was coming to Islands of Adventure. In it contains a comic strip background containing a couple of comic strips, and there seems to be a boat with a ton of cartoon characters on it. Of course, this is Olive Oil's ship. Those being Betty Boop, Pogo, Woody Woodpecker, and Blondie and Dagwood, just to name a few. Now, also, there seems to be a cardboard-type design of the entrance of Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls, which looks absolutely phenomenal. Also, the shark fins are animated, making you feel like you're really in the feel of the funny pages. There are also 2 controlled speakers in this room. There's also a ton of speech bubbles in the room, and an early prototype of the comic strip cafe logo is seen. Then, we also have a passport stamp machine. Each of the land's rooms have one, and once you stamp it, it features the Toon Lagoon logo. Even though there's lots to look at in this room, which makes you feel overwhelmed by what you see, there is one thing that makes it truly special, and that would have to be the promotional video. For those of you who don't know about the Preview Center, each of the lands that would be coming to Islands of Adventure, and to advertise it to get people hyped, would have videos that would play in each room. Toon Lagoon got that agenda. Its video content contains Dudley Do-Right, with a narrator explaining about the land entirely. Unfortunately, it remains lost media. To help out with the promotional videos done by the Preview Center, as well as the Dudley one, was done by Jake Carvey Studios, a company known for responsible for creating stuff for Warner Brothers, Disney, and more. And it was interesting enough that they did stuff for Universal, which included the Preview Center videos. So I tried contacting Jake Harvey to see if he had a copy of the promotional videos. Fortunately though, he replied by saying, "Hi, what a cool memory. Most of the source materials are long gone, but I'll see what I could do to answer some questions." I ran the team in charge of the 3D animation and editing, and you can certainly use the footage with credit too, with Spin Cycle Entertainment, Jake Harvey, and animation director Jake, which I am using right now. From the looks of things, it looks like he doesn't really have it, and it's lost forever, which isn't the best, but hopefully one day, someone will record all of the promotional videos in high quality. Someday. And this goes with the Toon Lagoon one. This is due to because home video of this is certainly rare. And another thing is that it's not the full version. So who knows what content remains lost in this promotional video. It would be cool to find it digitally. This also includes with the other promotional videos as well, as I would love to see these promotional videos out in the wild. If you have any info about the Lost Toon Lagoon promotional video, email me or comment down below. Please and thank you. At the Preview Center, they actually had comic strip artists and co-stars there, and special guests, including Jack McNally, who, of course, was responsible for creating Shoe. They also had the co-stars for Annie, was also there as well to help promote Annie being in, of course, in the Toon Lagoon, Islands of Adventure, Land. Mort Walker, the comic strip artist for B.O. Bailey. And finally, we have Mike Peters, who mainly did Mother Goose and Grimly comic strips. In the grand opening for the Preview Center to promote Toon Lagoon was Boris and Natasha, Rocky and Bullwinkle, Beetle Bailey, Nancy, Popeye, Olive Oil, Dudley Do-Right, and more. Not only that this is the first exposure of all the islands, but also the island Toon Lagoon. Universal Creative nailed the Preview Center, and might be one of the best preview centers ever made. Ultimately, this would not happen again with the Epic Universe Preview Center. Construction was moving underway on building Islands of Adventure. Anticipation was really buzzing. Toon Lagoon was already starting to almost look completed in 1998, in hopes that Toon Lagoon is a smashing hit. As the hourglass was ticking, Chris Stapleton and his team got the final touch on Toon Lagoon. Excitement was on the horizon. Everyone got a really extremely nice photo of the entire project team. It showed that Universal Creative Team did it. It wasn't a challenge, it was an imagination. It was teamwork in the best way possible.
Get ready for the next generation of theme park. Coming in 1999, Universal Studios' Islands of Adventure. Explore uncharted territory. Discover unlimited thrills. Live the adventure as never before.
Cut to spring 1999, previews for Islands of Adventure begin. Finally, on May 28th, 1999, Toon Lagoon and the rest of Universal Studios' Islands of Adventure would be officially open to guests.
When Islands of Adventure finally opened up, I had the whole virtual experience in my head. And when it opened up, it was like, oh my gosh, I can just pull this out and keep it from my memories of my family. I don't have to take that cognitive load of that responsibility to that guest coming in. And so that's probably the best moment is we were all given director's chairs out in front of our, in the middle of our islands when the first guest came in. And we answered questions to the press about the park and the experience. And I was able to talk one-to-one with all of them. And it was just an emotional catharsis and also a whole, neural relief. So it was an amazing opening day for very different reasons than most people think opening days are for.
And on opening day, Islands of Adventure had giant inflatables. And for Toon Lagoon, there was no exception, with a giant inflatable Woody Woodpecker showing on what the land would feature. The opening was something of this magnitude. It had giant inflatables, Spider-Man on a helicopter flying overhead, and the Human Torch flying around the islands. It was a really ambitious opening. Not to mention, there was a lot of celebrities there as well. It was that expensive, but all in all, it was not the terrible opening, just like Universal Studios Florida.
So, with the creative sparks from over 3,000 individuals, we are proud to unveil Universal Studios Islands of Adventure.
Islands of Adventure is going to blow Disney out of the water.
The key is making something new and different, which Universal and analysts think they've done with 5 different sections and 20 new attractions.
Just went on a Spider-Man ride, which is intense, and then just got off this Dr. Seuss ride. My kids are loving it.
And I keep telling my guys, we're making history. No one's ever going to pull anything off like this again. And to do it to the magnitude that we did it, you got to feel proud.
I really do believe this is the greatest theme park in the world.
So ahead of the show was so in sync. So the timing was so impeccable that it's kind of like Ron Howard and I turned to each other and said, that would be the take one, print, wrap, go to lunch. In this case, print, wrap, go to Jurassic Park.
The inflatables that were used in the ceremony was made by
Bigger Than Life.
Alright, I can't really show you all of it because I have a video to present. So, without further ado, cue the music!
Triplets with identical suits, an octopus and some boots, a big burger and shopping cart, a lighthouse and Mickey Mouse. Now don't have a cow, but we even made a Bart. A cat, a gnat, when he's at bat, he pulls a rabbit out his hat. A truck, a duck, a jar, a car, a bozo, or a power bar. Vino, Dino, his pal Fred, a clam, Shazam, 3 loads of bread, yeah!
With Dudley, do-right Popeye, too. Fun adventures wait for you. All your friends are coming soon. You'll find them here in Toon Lagoon.
Have you ever wondered where your favorite comic characters live when they're not in Saturday morning cartoons or the Sunday funnies? I don't know where they used to go, but they have a new home now. Toon Lagoon at Universal Studios' new Islands of Adventure.
So now that we explained the history on its origins, let's explore every square inch of Toon Lagoon, starting off with the amphitheater that's on the left inside. This is where our first attraction comes in, Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, a short-lived live show which features cartoon characters. Now, if you do want to learn more about the story beyond the show, I highly recommend checking out YouTuber's Storybook Amusements video on the subject, because he did an amazing job documenting the full history of this forgotten show in its entirety. Link in the description. But to summarize, this show was kind of added later on in development. Writing the soundtrack would be Andrew Lipia, and for who would be producing the show would be Tom Gregory and Scott Helminster, who would be the producers of the show. For the ones that did the outfits for the walk-around characters would be helped by USC Costume Shop and Elijah Kranich, and as well as John David Ridge, who did costumes for Hollywood productions.
Just kidding, fearless leader. You know what they always call me, million less better now.
Now for the stage was handcrafted by Bob Harris, and some of the scenic work was made by Piper Productions. Before it opened in 1999, to all guests, the stage was utilized for an episode on Rosie O'Donnell's show, and it featured special guests such as NSYNC, TLC, and 98 Degrees. Oh man, the 90s, what a peak time to be alive. And the Pandemonium Cartoon Circus officially opened to guests with special performances such as Dudley Do-Right and Barry and the Hatchet, Betty Boop, Starstruck, Blondie, and Dagwood, and the Bouncing Bumsteads, and Olive Oil doing a tightrope stunt. Also, for the songs in the show, is The Circus is Coming to Town, Funny Business, Go Popeye Go, and finally, The Last Laugh. However, the show did not last long, as unfortunately the show closed on February of 2000.
You would walk through to Toon Lagoon, and that's where I started. Like I said, we did the Toon Circus show. I played Bluto, and 5 shows. I think we started out doing 5 shows. It only ran 9 months. It was a very expensive show, a huge cast, elaborate costumes. We were all doing circus acts and stunts in full character costume. I don't think that would ever fly today.
Gee, it really did get the last laugh.
Outside of Toon Lagoon is the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater, or whatever it's called this hour. And we opened with a show that was written by a composer named Andrew Lippa, who at the time was not successful, but is now a Broadway composer. He wrote The Big Fish, Addams Family, The Wild Party. I mean, he is a very successful Broadway composer, but he wasn't back then. And that was a really great show, but really long and a lot of rubberhead characters, not moving their lips to a soundtrack, just kind of, nodding and stuff like that. But it was a very ambitious show and had a great kind of Broadway soundtrack. It was 22 minutes long, not air conditioned there. The guests got very restless and kind of like, ooh, what are we doing here? And it closed after a short time and became a skateboard extravaganza. Or here, look, I can flip a bike on a ramp.
Pandemonium Cartoon Circus was a very good show, albeit with the occasional issues that were behind the scenes. The first real issue of the show was the amphitheater itself. It seems like Universal forgot that it wasn't an air-conditioned space, which would lead to heat into the performers while they were practicing. The second issue was how intense the performers used the larger walk-around characters, which I am referring to the costumes that were made by Custom Characters International. Having performers doing real stunts in these costumes was really ahead of its time, which had a lot of stress and rehabilitation on the performers, especially during practicing every day. Here's an example. Disney doesn't put stress on their performers with larger walk-around suits, unless Goofy is being forced to do some BMX stunts. With Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, that can be a bit tricky. While some of them don't have to put a lot of strain on their bodies. The third issue was that some of the performers complained about the space and the working environment, and some didn't want to agree to continue performing the show, and some would essentially be doing a voyage of Sinbad instead, because people won't have to worry about limitation and probably a good conditioned space. All of these issues combining with the attendance of the show not seeing profit from Universal were all the reasons for the closure being short-lived. But this does not mean the end of Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, because there's actually something still left from the Pandemonium Cartoon Circus days. And that would have to be the banners that were on the lampposts outside, telling people on what to expect and who they'll see upon making their way inside. It's truly shocking they still have them up after all these years. So the next time that you go to Islands of Adventure, keep a lookout for these banners, because these banners have a significant impact in Universal's history. They also had other minor shows near the amphitheater, including a beach party, and sometimes having a character dance to one of the songs from Pandemonium Cartoon Circus, or just having a band playing. After Pandemonium Cartoon Circus ran its course, more shows would follow, but I decided to go ahead and do a montage because I don't want to make this entry an hour long of talking about every single show that's been at the theater, as well as events. So without further ado, here's some shows and events from over the years inside of the theater.
Every day we wake up and make up the jokes. Every day we wake up to break up the folks. Every day we got a silly job to do. Cause every day we want to make them laugh. Who? You! We're in the funny business. We're working round the clock. We're in the funny business. Investing in laughing stuff. Till every joke is sold. Before the gag gets old. We'll turn it into gold. Working in the funny business.
After that, though, the theater has now sat abandoned to rot. So, who knows what will happen to this amphitheater? Are they going to demolish it? Or are they going to add another new show? Only time will tell. But moving away from the amphitheater, we now enter to the main marquee. However, did you know that it wasn't going to look like this? As a matter of fact, the logo would have been very different, as it would have had a black color on the words with a wood on Toon, with the word Lagoon on a speech bubble, and with a water splat on the background. However, last minute they decided to go ahead and change it to the logo you are familiar with, the one where the Toon Lagoon name with the speech bubble.
Betty Boop. Hi, Betty.
Hi there.
May I say you look lovely.
Why, thank you. What's your name?
My name is Bruce Blitz, and I've had a crush on you for a long time.
Yeah?
Alright, let's move on. And then you enter to the area of Comic Strip Lane. For Comic Strip Lane, remember that I mentioned about that concept art from when the street was called Comic Strip Lane, somewhere around 1992. Well, what if I told you that for the final version of Toon Lagoon, this area is called Comic Strip Lane? It made it into the final cut, but before it was Comic Strip Lane, it went through a couple of name changes. On trademark in November 1st, 1994, was Toon Square. On November 3rd, 1994, they decided to change it to Cartoon Crossroads, before ultimately coming back to Comic Strip Lane. Although originally, you would actually enter to it very, very differently, as you would have actually entered into a street with a full-on Mickey's Toontown-esque feel to it. This concept art was designed by Wes Cook, somewhere around 1994, when it was still in development. And if you don't know who Wes Cook is, well, he did a lot of stuff from McDonald's around the 1970s to 1980s. Also, why the heck is Mighty Mouse here? Well, Universal was considering on making a Mighty Mouse themed show, but this never came to be, sadly. Anywho, a couple of concept drawings were made of possible concepts, including a parody of Gatorland, which is a tourist attraction in Orlando, and this would have been based on Pogo, which is a comic strip by United Features Syndicate. Other concepts including an ice cream quick service location from the comic strip Herb and Jamal. Broomhilda would have had her own exterior entrance named Broomhilda's Witchcrafts, and it would have light up very well at night. A different exterior on Beetle Bailey's exterior, which later on turned into the Beetle Bailey relaxing in his tent, a kiosk with an elephant spraying water on some sort of base, and even a Grimly the Dog theme entrance. Another concept would be Annie's Warbucks Mansion, based on the comic strip. And speaking of that property, they would have also included some sort of gift store that never went anywhere. Originally, though, there would have been a Chili Willy ice cream quick service location, which would have had Chili Willy on ice skates, spinning around in circles. Personally, I think this is a really cool, as it's shaped like an ice cube. Why did we not get this? The original building exterior for Heathcliff was Heathcliff jumping from a diving board into a trash can, earning a garbage gourmet first place medal. It would also have a neon sequence depiction of him jumping into the trash can. Why did we not get this? Also, there would have also been a circus tent building called Magic Comics, where guests can take cartoony pictures. Again, why did we not get this? There would also have been a Woody Woodpecker clock shop called Woody's Cuckoo Clock Shop that has to be one of the best names for any clock shop. Again, why did we not get this? Speaking of Woody Woodpecker, I completely forgot about the fact that Universal decided to put Walter Land's properties last minute into Toon Lagoon. I believe the main reasoning behind this was because Universal at the time was trying to make Woody Woodpecker their official mascot of Universal theme parks. And plus, he's a cartoon! Come on, guys. He fits prestigiously. Not only that, another good reasoning is because Universal has the rights to the famous woodpecker. So, it wasn't hard to get the licensing. Back on topic, next was Dennis the Menace store, or an exterior connecting to the comic strip Lane store you see right now. And last but certainly not least, a giant refrigerator themed to Family Circus. Before I continue, the people who worked on Toon Lagoon would be Tom Lloyd from Idodenic Scenic Inc., along with the Florida-based company Sightline, as they were actually responsible for fabricating the scenery of Toon Lagoon. Tom Lloyd said, quote, "The fabrication of all this scenery was a huge challenge," unquote. The senior art director for the exteriors was Ray Carlson, who is part of the Universal Korea team. Another would be John Martin, who helped out with the design of the exterior lighting. Park Wide designed the lighting as well. And John Martin said, quote, that his goal was to make the characters come to life at night, make King's Row really bright and beautiful, and add color that would not necessarily be there during the day, so the area would be transformed at night. Audio software producer and for the soundtrack is John Russ for Toon Lagoon.
So here's what happens. I had ridden It's a Small World and was always annoyed that you could hear two different tracks at the same time. You go in the next chamber and the one behind you is going. So as technology got better and we could synchronize multiple players, that's what I wanted to do in Toon Lagoon. And so Comic Strip Lane is a whole bunch of tracks all playing in dead sync at the same time. Betty Boop is singing I Want to Be Loved by You in dead sync with every other track that's going up and down the street, with the Vikings that are singing up on the top, with the dogs that are barking in the fountain, with Blondie and Dagwood singing their song down there, with the trumpet, Beetle Bailey's trumpets playing out of tune. He's playing a counter melody to this vamp that plays as you walk down the street. So that was really one of the joys, to prove that we could do that. And I'll tell you, that's another thing about family, is the hardware producer, his name was Bill Battelle. That's still his name, probably. And Bill lives and works in Orlando. Bill was a partner in creating this stuff. Sometimes we, the creatives, we call on the technical and we say, we want the room to spin and puke and turn all colors. And they go, you can't do that. I would go to Bill and say, I want to do this. And he would say, I want to do that too. And together, he designed the hardware that could do the tricks that we wanted to do. And that was a partnership. Again, happens very rarely where a group of people, creatives, get together and all kind of support each other and work with the technical and work with all of that.
Well, okay, let's take that. And John Russ did an amazing job of the audio, and he went in and hired, award-winning composers and researched in the Library of Congress all these different tunes that he could explore and create music from just a little soundbite. Popeye is da 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 da. I mean, you can't hear that more than once without kind of walking out. And in fact, soundtracks, we can subconsciously get you to exit a building by repeating the soundtrack. So by repeating the soundtrack and not having a long enough composition, we could be doing ourselves a disservice. So John Rust was being able to expand the soundtrack to be able to create a whole CD of soundtracks, and it's wonderfully beautiful. And it really understands these different aspects of sound and music. So music and dance are related, all right? That is also an embodied story, is music and dance. It's intuitive. We all know how to do it. No one has to tell you how to do it. It's spontaneous, okay? And so when you're going and having an embodied story in the theme park, it is as related to music and dance as possible. And so that soundtrack you can't listen to just on a stereo. You have to be walking through that space. And that's what was unique about King's Row and looking at and walking through the center of Toon Lagoon that Reed Carson designed, because what happened is that we embodied all these different sounds and music and dialogue and all of embedded into this facade. Betty Boop's music came from Betty's Boop store. Little Abner voice came from the little Abner, graphic. And so all of these things that we could have is what I call ear cons as opposed to icons, is that you could, oh, this, oh, that, and be able to walk through it.
This would also be helped by Tony Hemake and Chip Smith. John Russ said, quote, I wanted to put a stereo soundtrack down the length of it. In that soundtrack, there are 40-point source speakers down the length of the area. Let's say Betty Boop is singing I Want to Be Loved by You on top of her piano. At the same time, her piano player is performing a solo on a separate track. Up the street a bit, all the dogs from various comic strips are sitting in a fountain and they're barking to I Want to Be Loved by You. Further up the street, Blondie and Dagwood are singing fragments from their theme from the 1950s cartoon series. They're putting their melody against Betty's song and everything else. Across the street, there's Hagar the Horrible, with a glee club of drunken Vikings singing original music and lyrics about how awful it is to be a Viking. There are actually 14 of these vignettes playing up and down this area. That requires 2 Photex hard drives running in sync. For exterior design and character fixture design was done by Ken Daniels and from the firm KDLD. For in-house character fixture coordinator was done by Wendy Wood. For lighting designer would be Pat Glados. Alongside him on the project designer would be Abram Edbin. Other personal helpers for Toon Lagoon, which includes project architects Robert Pennypacker, area development architect Brent Lemon, the architecture firm would be CRSS, and audio hardware director Asher Bloom. And for the hardware audio designer would be SPL. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the final product. The land features about 150 characters in a span of 80 comic strips, which is very cool. Let's first talk about the comic strip Cafe, which is very well themed. Believe it or not, in development, the original name for Comic Strip Cafe was called Cartoon Cafe, which was trademarked on May 2nd, 1994. It's unknown what this Cartoon Cafe would have entailed, but likely featuring cartoons in the restaurant, which was the original vision. But also a very, very 90s cafe, which contains comic strips all around the inside and out. Those comic strips features Popeye, Marvin, Grimly the dog, and Animal Crackers, and just to name a few. They serve lunch and dinner menus. They mainly sell sandwiches, pizza sizes, beverages, desserts, beer, Asian, and salads. It even includes outside seating. And if you want to look more detailed into the food they sell there, I highly recommend checking the Universal Orlando official app to find more information on what type of food they sell. And one more thing about Comic Strip Cafe. I highly recommend checking this place out if you ever go back to Universal, because it's a very well themed restaurant and one of my favorites in the resort in terms of theming. Moving away from the Comic Strip Cafe, on your right hand side is a store called Toon Extra, which contains Toon Lagoon merchandise. Which, let me tell you, the merchandise they sold, I wish I would have saw in person if I ever stepped back into the 1990s. Unfortunately, later on, The store now sells Hello Kitty and Despicable Me stuff. For some reason, I forgot to mention that on the sign of Comic Strip Cafe features Broomhilda. It's unknown who's playing the character, but here's the audio.
Oh, stupid bull! Who put a building there anyway? This witch doesn't know which way is which. Oh, my nose! Hope it didn't bend my wart.
Next to the Comic Strip Cafe, we have Kathy's Ice Cream, which is a quick service location where you can get ice cream and drinks. This is entirely themed on the comic strip called simply as Kathy. Moving on, we have the Betty Boop store. The entrance contains Betty Boop on top of her piano, along with Bimbo playing the piano. In the store contains all your favorite Betty Boop goods. They even had a statue of her as well, originally. Now it's used now as a Universal Pass holder lounge. The voice actor who played Betty Boop in the Betty Boop store for John Russ's soundtrack was Sandy Fox, and we might actually hear the name later on in this video. Next, we have all the dogs enjoying a fun time near the fire hose with water spraying out of the pole. The water effects in Comic Strip Lane was helped by Technofix. They are responsible for doing this amazing water tunnel in the now defunct Poseidon's Fury at Lost Continent. Moving on, we have Blondie's Home of Dagwood Eatery. Believe it or not, it actually began development when it was Cartoon World, and would featured in this concept art here. But when Cartoon World was scrapped, the plan for Blondie's and Dagwood's restaurant was still happening, which is not surprising. Of course, Blondie's also has a lunch and dinner menu, which includes, of course, sandwiches, but they also sell hot dogs as well. You can even enjoy some midnight snacks and desserts. And also, you can't forget about the beverages. Like, come on, guys. You can't really forget about the beverages. It's not possible. The theming inside Blondie's is truly fantastic, and definitely recreates the Blondie and Dagwood comic strips, which is what this restaurant eatery is based on. Then we have the What's Amana You store, themed to Rocky and Bullwinkle. This was filed on April 13th, 1998, as a trademark, a property from J. Ward, and features one-of-a-kind merchandise. However, like I mentioned with the Toon Extra store, it too suffered the same thing, because now it just clashes with other properties, which includes Sanrio and Secret Life of Pets, which is a huge shame. Now, there's also a couple of photo ops around Toon Lagoon, including taking pictures of a speech bubble, which sounds like a very clever concept, or how about you go ahead and act like you're holding on a leash of Mama Duke? Which is probably another comic strip I don't think many of you have heard of. Now, let's talk about the walk-around characters that you would find in Toon Lagoon. Originally. I say originally because most of these walk-around characters haven't been at the parks for a long time, and the only characters that they have now is Betty Boop, Popeye, and Olive Oil, and that's about it. But here is all of the original characters that you would have saw, all made by Custom Characters International, which has a very rich history with Universal. The characters included are Beetle, Bailey, and Zero, Woody Woodpecker, Popeye, and Olive Oil head versions, and Bluto respectively, Broomhilda, Boris, and Natasha, and the live-action versions of them for some reason, and Betty Boop head version, Dudley Do-Right, and finally, Rocky and Bullwinkle. Okay, so you know the Bullwinkle walk-around suit, right? Well, while I was researching for this video, I came across this. Do you see it? Someone has the actual costume that was used for Toon Lagoon. Holy cow, how did this person was able to obtain it? A Universal costume of all things. Give a huge shout out for this person for getting this amazing costume. I appreciate the save there. Speaking of walk-around suits from Universal, I am very curious what Universal does to their costumes after one costume is retired. Do you? Now, when Toon Lagoon opened in 1999, there was also a Streetmosphere show, which is where they use to have the characters ride on a trolley doing a little performance out for some giggles and laughs. Unfortunately, there's always have to be some form of an end. So around the late 2000s, they kind of stopped doing that, sadly. But here's a fun fact about the trolley car. The trolley car was actually used from Universal Studios Florida throughout the later half of the 1990s, before it came into Toon Lagoon. After they stopped doing the Streetmosphere show near the center of the hub, they decided to go ahead and use it for meet and greets and for special events, and transferred it back to Universal Studios Florida. However, Universal decided to put it backstage, never to be seen again. But not for long, as a Chinese amusement park would eventually bought the trolley car for all things, and now the trolley car can be found at Harbin Amusement Park. The current whereabouts of the trolley car now is unknown, and I'm not sure if the amusement park is still using this exact trolley car from Universal. Comment down below if you have more information about this. I would love to know. Fascinating history, isn't it? And finally, we get to our last store through the beaten path of comic strip lane, Gasoline Alley, based on the comic strip by the same name. This is where you can get your swim trunks, beach towels, swimsuits, hats, and ponchos. So in case if you want to go on one of these water rides and you're worried about getting soaked to the brim, conveniently, Gasoline Alley is the store for you. What I really like about this is the team thought of Gasoline Alley when you can actually make an actual gas station. It fits the tone very well. Comic Strip Lane is an absolute beautiful masterpiece that Ray Carlson designed, who was part of the Universal creative team. And while it does look cheap from far away, don't let it fool you. How they turn these characters into 3 dimensions is a true testament of color and immersiveness. The point being that you're entering the comic strip, and I think the concept works very well. It has a deeper meaning to fully grasp at. It all comes into sync. For example, if you're closer to Betty Boop, you'll hear her singing. If you're closer to Professor Cosmo Fishhawk from Shoe, typing on his computer, you can actually hear him typing on his computer.
And also, if you walk over here, you can actually hear this guy typing. Let's see if you can hear the typing noise. Did you guys hear the typing noise? The music is blasting, but it can be heard.
If you're closer to Dennis the Menace, you'll hear him say, "Hey, Mr. Wilson." The clever and its uniqueness stands out. And that's what's so great about Comic Strip Lane. Chris Stapleton and his team were able to pull off something that really should be praised more, and the universal technology it has. It's a shame no one goes and takes a second to admire this area. The design aspect is also a plus as well. There are a lot of hidden elements spread throughout Comic Strip Lane, if you take the time to look. An example such as the family circus scavenger hunt is another hidden detail, or the hidden comic strips that are up above a certain building. I can go on about Comic Strip Lane, but let's move on to our next entry. We can't chat about Toon Lagoon without mentioning what happened in 2002. Strap in, folks. This one might be a bit creepy and maybe unnerving. I'm referring to Halloween Horror Nights, which is a Halloween event that Universal created and still popular today. But for HHN 12 through 14, they had Islands of Adventure doing the event, which means Toon Lagoon may turn a bit sinister through these years. But before we talk about it, if you don't like to get nightmares or having an irrational fear of something, I highly recommend skipping to this part of the video. But for those who are staying, let's start talking about Halloween Horror Nights 12. The tagline for the event would be Islands of Fear, and it certainly has fear in the name. All jokes aside, when you walk into Toon Lagoon, you would discover the scare zone, called Treeks and Foons, and Toon Lagoon is full of free roaming clowns. But however, these clowns are not meant to scare, instead to make you smile. Originally, the Treeks and Foons Scare Zone was going to be called Twisted Toons, when Universal was trying to design the houses and scare zones for the original planning of their icon for that year's event, which we will talk about in a little bit. But then, ultimately, due to the changes in development, Treeks and Foons would be the replacement name. Originally, in development, for the backstory for the Treeks and Foons, was that the Treeks were going to be male, and the Foons were going to be female. And what was interesting about this was that the story of them was originally planned to be much darker and kind of uncomfortable backstory, with the caretaker forcing these creatures to be, I'm not making this up, neutered and forced to smile. Yeah, this backstory thankfully wasn't included, and no mention of it ever occurred in the event. Otherwise, it would have gone some bit of backlash and discomfort to the general HHN parkgoers. They served the icon of that year, of the caretaker. And what is an icon? Well, simply an original character that's not based on an IP. Mainly, think of a mascot, if you will. But back on topic, the story of these Treeks and Foons, they have somehow turned the land of cartoons into a more creepy and frightening version, but far less scary. But all of the comic strip lane turns into a world of bubbles, full of foam, everywhere. This was done by bubble machines that are on top of the scaffolding tower. This amazing creation would take 55 gallons of drone, which essentially is soap, substance which then interjects the air. With this, it makes a bubble bath type of foam, which is actually really neat. Primarily, these somehow terrifying characters also pop out in the bubbles. So if you better watch out because they are coming to play with you. They will also be a couple of pyrotechnics as well throughout Comic Strip Lane to add the spine-chilling effect. The director of art and design would be TJ Manarero, which also helped out with the other scare zones and houses. Speaking of which, also, the house at the event of that year would be Scary Tales 2, which is a sequel to an already existing house from the previous Halloween Horror Nights. This house is located in the Popeye and Bluto's Bill Drabbarge's queue. The history of this house was that the house would be originally named Scary Tales Volume 2, The Malice of the Terror Land, and would have returning and new fairy tales. But this was around the time when Universal was making the icon originally as Cindy, who would be a creepy girl, but eventually the character was scrapped and would be officially replaced by the caretaker. With this, the house would be renamed as just Scary Tales 2. The description for the house reads, "Step into the pages of the grimliest fairy tales ever told, where nobody lives happily ever after. In fact, nobody lives." For the storyline of the house, these were already troublesome stories, and fables made even more unbearable by Albert Cranny, who is the caretaker. So now, let's talk about the house, shall we? First, you enter inside of this weird, chilling creature's mouth. Then, after, guests would walk up the stairs as when they hear children singing and as well as humming. The first room has guests walking into a room of many, many toys. And just when you think that Toy Story didn't scare you enough, when you were a child, think again. Andy. From the movie, Raggedy and Andy, A Musical Adventure, would scare you jumping out behind the wall. Next, visitors would go through a hallway with smiling mouths, which are painted on the walls. Next, visitors would enter a painted room with dead decaying lambs hanging from overhead. Man, why did they have to kill the Serta sheep mascots so bad? I mean, come on, they look innocent enough. Then suddenly, Mary jumps out by holding a disembodied lamb. And I believe Mary is probably upset that someone killed her sheep. Now, guests enter into the next room, which contains a jester. Hey look, it's the jester animatronic from Majaco's Mardi Gras Madness, which that could be for a whole other video on its own. Wink wink. Next, there's also a room with the Cheshire Cat. And no, it's not that Cheshire Cat from Disney. This would also have a spotlight that would shine on the Cheshire Cat, Another room would featured Little Miss Muffet, which somehow got turned into a spider. Good one, guys. Apparently, she would sit on her tuffet, startling at all the visitors that pass by behind those spider webs. Next should be a spider web room. This is probably where one of her victims are. The next room contains one of the Treeks and Fooms. The next room is a hypersonic room, which is all covered by white and black stripes, with a scare actor blending into the wall, as the scare actor would be running towards the guests. The next room is a cornfield with a doll pinned to the wall of the corn stalks hanging on the ceiling. But then a scarecrow, which is no correlation with the Wizard of Oz, with a jump scare behind the fence. But then the next room, you then enter Grandma's cottage, where, of course, the big bad wolf would be seen, dead, lying on Grandma's bed. Ooh. Suddenly, Grandma would appear with the wolf's head on her hand. She's also is pretending to be eating the wolf. The final room features the Headless Horseman, and including the 3 little pigs, with them holding chainsaws. Wow. Apparently there were a few other things that I really didn't mention here, like a bloody white rabbit with a noose tied around his neck, and Princess and Allison from Alice in Wonderland somehow have an involvement in this, and the rooms were pretty much outside, according to the Halloween Horror Nights fandom. Next would be the following year, for Halloween Horror Nights 13. For this year, the scare zone would be called Hide and Shriek. Due to its popularity of the camouflage scares was so successful, Universal decided to make a scare zone fully dedicated of all your camouflage needs for Halloween Horror Nights 13. And what better way to do this is Toon Lagoon. The description reads, "It's a cartoon world gone mad. The ink itself seems to come to life, as buildings, objects, and creatures all blend together into bizarre shapes and patterns that tear into your sanity. The fog rises and the bubbles fall as you try to make your way through the island of illusion. You are blinded by the sun, flashes of strobe lights, and all you can see above you is a nauseating wave of water. Watch your every move. The ink blots are in the shadows waiting for you." The scare zone through Comic Strip Lane is all black and white structures of scare actors dressed in similar black and white outfits, very much trying to blend in to the structure. First off, why are these scare actors giving me the Spot from Spider-Man Across the Multiverse? I mean, come on. You can't tell me that's not him. Again, though, all jokes aside, there would be a green light effect primarily shown above the fog. Generally, in my opinion, this does not look like a great scare zone. I mean, yes, you do get scared from it, that's no question. The problem is how they designed it compared to other scare zones. I saw they always have a theme behind them to make them stand out, although the concept just feels but that's just me. The house for that year would be Ships of Screams, which would be located yet again in the Popeye and Bluto's Build Draft Barges queue. The point here is that it's all themed to be a ghost ship called the HMS Friday for the house, which includes a bridge and the ship lower levels. After that, you're now walking through the facade, and guests would also climb up some stairs, which has portholes on either side, containing scare actors who somehow stare at guests. Visitors would now enter the control room, where they stumbled across the captain, manning and steering the wheel, and would yell, "You're going to die in here somehow." The flooded rooms and doors containing the ghosts of the ship passengers can be seen. And then the final scene is a swinging luggage on the ceiling. And that's just pretty much it from what we know. The description reads, "This Arcane cruise liner was found adrift at sea without a soul on board. Now its decks are roamed by a ghostly crew and passengers. Will you be joining them?" The HMS Friday set sail on January of 1913. It was the day found mysteriously adrift in Atlantic Ocean, with not a soul on board. Now parked and slowly decaying in the harbor, passengers and crew of the ship from long ago have returned and are hungry for company. Will you see land again, or will you become a passenger? Well, I probably want to go in the land. That's probably my choice. There would be 5 of the scare actors had woman and blue dress. There would be 2 crew members in coveralls and headlamp, 2 men in white dress clothing, and a man in white dress jacket, shirt as well as pants. 2004 would probably be the last time that Toon Lagoon would ever be a part of Halloween Horror Nights, and really, nothing really crazy happened, other than Bill and Ted Excellent Halloween Adventure, which would be housed at the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater, which I did mention in my montage of the amphitheater shows in Toon Lagoon.
What I'd like to know is, it's a dream come true, I know of many of you, to become actors and actresses. Do we have any potential actors and actresses here on our stage today? A few of you? I'm looking for somebody who would like to play the part of, Nell. Who would like, I need a woman who wants to play the part. You raised your hand. You said you're Nell, right? Oh, come right down here. You stand.
Now, let's move away from all the scares and chills, and whatever this is, and let's talk about our first water ride in the land, Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls. But before we do that, there actually was another attraction in a full-on area that was planned in Toon Lagoon. This would have been a J. Wardland area dedicated to the works of J. Ward, and it would have actually been a roller coaster themed to Boris and Natasha. And if you don't know who these 2 guys are, well, they're actually from the Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, created by J. Ward. However, this never came to fruition, and it might be due to budget cuts. There also would have actually been a full-on Dudley Do-Right store, called Dudley Do-Right's Yukon Outfitters, but sadly, this was ultimately scrapped. The same also applies with the Mr. Peabody Insurance store, which also was ejected, and the whole J. Ward area was scaled back, and just the water ride, which is sadly disappointing. But anyways, let's talk about the history of one of my favorite water rides in the land. The area would actually be more elaborate as its own separate area. In the original plans for Cartoon World, aka Islands of Adventure, this would be called the Northwest Mining Camp, which actually would have been a land in the original Toon Lagoon area. The attraction would also be originally named Dudley Do-Right's Great Northwest Sawmill. The whole theming was originally supposed to be wilderness type theme. However, due to how it looks similar to Splash Mountain, and so, with that, the plans were dropped. The Great Northwest Sawmill name had to be altered on November 1st, 1994, and trademarked as Ripsaw Falls, which then became Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls on August 26, 1996, and the rest is history. Also, there would have actually been a huge statue of all the characters, and one which didn't really make it into the final product. And also, there was a scene that I think many die-hard theme park fans and Universal fans know this one, in which the scene where the logs at the final drop have both the logs split in half, with them actually dueling each other. However, this plan never really saw the light of day. Also, the whole wilderness campground setting would be completely scrapped entirely, changed to a more and more cartoony feel. The original concept art for this was created by Goddard and his team, but however, they actually decided to get a new concept designer for the attraction, which would be Steve Lodwick. Now, this guy is very important, and I think a lot of people should hear more about this man. And it sucks no one knows he even exists. Let me introduce to you Stephen Danks Lodwick. He was an illustrator and a concept designer for theme park attractions. Not to mention, he also created his own company called Mighty Scenic Incorporated, which would be a design studio. With this, around the mid-1990s, he would work for Universal Creative, with such attractions including the well-beloved E.T. Adventure, Jaws, and the big one. No, not this big one. And shockingly, the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera interactive area at Universal Studios, Florida. During this time, he would work for Islands of Adventure and would help out on Seuss Landing and the main subject in our video, Toon Lagoon. He would be the task on the designer for Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls. The inspiration behind the attraction was his own personal library, which contains books of topics such as cartoons, restaurants and dinners, national parks, wildlife, ghost towns, and the history of the general American and Canadian background. Thus, these books and the topics within helped Lodwick on creating the design for the attraction. Now, Lodwick was determined on creating the best story-driven attraction on a popular cartoon variety show. And yes, he was certainly locked in. And no matter what, though, he had a lot of a passion for it, not to mention advertising the attraction. After he was done at Universal Creative, he worked for other companies including Disney Imagineering around the late 1990s, Landmark Entertainment Group, and finally Paramount Parks, which is now owned by Six Flags Entertainment Corporation. However, in 2002, Lodwick passed away, and I have to say that he is a wonderful man. I've never met him in my entire life, but his legacy will certainly not be missed. Not only did he make one of the best attractions at Universal, and one of my favorites, I might add, and he had a clear vision for not just Dudley Do-Right, but for the entire theme park world. And and I salute to you, Stephen Lodwick, on your passing. After his death, his family decided to donate Lodwick's personal collection at the UCF libraries at UCF University, which includes 1,000 books and drawings. With this, an exhibit was made for his honor, which has original drawings and storyboards for Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls, promotional materials used to promote the attraction, and as well as the opening for the ride, photographs of the construction, and small selection of books for his inspiration for the ride. All of this sounds really awesome. Unfortunately though, I tried looking for photos or videos on it, and no luck. If you want to find the place, it's the Rosen exhibits at the Rosen Library of UCF's Rosen College campus. However, the place is permanently closed, which happened on April 29th, 2025 at 5 p.m. They're doing a border renovations of the campus, but library resources and support services are available to the facility, staff, and as well as students, which could be possible. But if you have any photos or video of this exhibit, send an email to me about it. If you have info on it, please and thank you. The model that was created for the setup and entrance for the attraction was done by 1111 Creative. Their portfolio is they've done other theme park attractions for models in the past, including E.T. Adventure and the ride that should not be named. The production designer would be Dennis Imhoff, and so construction truly began for the attraction, and hopes were very high. Chris Stapleton says that this log flume would be an aqua coaster, half roller coaster, half flume ride. One of the biggest challenges that they had to face in construction was for the lighting for Ripsaw Falls, integrating with the complicated building. Another one had to be the Mount Rushmore, which includes faces of Dudley, Nell, Inspector Fenwick, and Dudley's horse, as they had to get the mountain lit in a dramatic way, without them having to blast into the eyes of people well on the ride, as well as the queue line. The animatronics that were made for the attraction was created by APG Technologies and Wired Studios, would be helped on creating the animatronics. The animated figures are actually made out of metal material and age pretty well than something like a latex mask. The same also applies with Popeye as well, which we will get there. So that way, if they ever get wet or get soaked, they won't decay, other than the paint, which could possibly mean why they probably went with animated figures instead of animatronics. But that's just a theory. Also, Kay Cohen, who worked at Wired Studios, also helped on the sculptures for both attractions, as well as Comic Strip Lane, which I forgot to mention. The 70-foot drop in the attraction was helped by mock rides. Also, the log was created by Stephen Lodwick, and also to design it and make it to reality was mock rides. Other people who worked on the project, including Larry Cooper, who was a show engineer manager for the attraction. For ride engineer would be Ted Van Winkle. Around March of 1997, in Wadrig, Germany, they would have a vertical drop test to see if it works well with the boats. After this, though, a couple of test runs were made for Dudley Do-Right. Then around 1998, the very first water tests happened around this time. On previews, Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls went through a lot of downtime and would frequently be closed most of the time that you were at previews. Well, this was obviously due because it needed some extra work and also because it was test rehearsals, meaning that it probably went through a lot of tweaking in order to make sure everything is working properly. It still probably needed a lot of time to make sure the operation is correctly there on the dot. Mike said on the Orlando Sentinel, quote, "I guess Dudley really is in charge of this ride. It was never open the 2 times I was there. The last time, a week before today's official opening. But thankfully, it was open to the public, and they got everything under control." Somehow, let's rewind back to 1995, when the Orlando Sentinel might have actually released more information about Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls. So yeah, Stephen Danks Lodwick's art for the attraction actually got exposed in 1995, showing what was about to be a secret plan, now not secret anymore. Really wild stuff. So the Orlando Sentinel would be the first to publish new information about Dudley Do-Right's presence to getting an attraction. Wild, isn't it? However, around this time that the Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls attraction was in development, a Dudley Do-Right movie was in the works by Hugh Wilson, also coming out in 1999, the same year that the new attraction opened. However, as we all know, the movie would be a critical flop. While not confirmed by Universal if the move to open Ripsaw Falls on May 28, 1999 was because of the movie coming out on August 27th, I believe there were some gritty decisions, with that being the case. Coincidence? Maybe not. It was officially opened in 1999, with the rest of the Islands of Adventure. Primarily, let's talk about the ride experience. Guests would be going through the entrance, and then you enter into Yukon Theater. On your right, you'll see parody posters such as Jaws, Star Wars, Silence of the Lambs, Three Men and the Little Lady, and E.T. However, there were actually other parody movie posters that were planned. Those include the Titanic, which have been something interesting to see. And that's just pretty much it. After this though, you head through the caves. In the cave, you see a bird on the porch. And then you'll see a sign saying coming soon from your favorite villain, Snidely Whiplash, BSO, as you're seeing a construction behind it, with lots of J-Wood rocks, which was actually a hard challenge for the team. Can we just appreciate the art and craftsmanship that went with this drawing? Apparently, it seems like Snidely has enough money to build his own theme park. Personally, I think it's genius. And yeah, not a lot of people actually know about this, or seen it, unless if you've been on the ride a lot of times. But look closer, there is a lot of Easter eggs to set into this concept art that was used in the queue. The first being Snidely Whiplash wearing the Cat in the Hat's hat, a circus tent, which is a reference to Circus McGurkus at Seuss Landing, the lighthouse, which is an icon of Islands of Adventure, and also Olive Oil's ship, is seen around on the coaster track. Essentially, Snidely Whiplash made his park Islands of Misadventure. This shows how special they really put into not only Jay Ward's creation, but also Toon Lagoon and the source material. And then you enter to see Nell's door, and Snidely Whiplash is kidnapping Nell. Simply put, it seems as if guests are entering into a movie set, and the Dudley Do-Right characters are all actors. Next, you then enter into the prop department room with a fun animatronic show, The Bear and the Beaver. Fun fact about Bear and the Beaver, though they were actually added last minute, since originally they were not featured in the original plans before they were added, to give guests a little bit of entertainment and some jokes. The characters are voiced by Dom DeLuise and Charles Nelson. Generally, the inspiration for this 16-minute show was the Country Bear Jamboree, since they also had animals on plaques.
Anyway, so there's a prop room as you go through the queue, and on the wall is a bear and a beaver, right? So I just like, what other excuse? So Dom DeLuise was a friend of mine, and I asked Dom, would you and Charles Nelson Riley, who are just, those are names from the 60s of comedians. They, Dom is in all those Smokey and the Bandit movies. He's in, and Charles is just it's everything. You turn on any variety show and so we get Charles and Dom in the studio and say, you're going to be the Bear and the Beaver. And we had a big drawing of the Bear and the Beaver in the back, and they look at it, and it's like old vaudevillians that have just died and been forgotten in this prop room. And we did 8 hours with these guys, and I had a headache by the end. It was just, we had laughed from morning to lunch break, and from lunch break to the end of the day. Just the funniest, maybe 30% we couldn't use as a little adult humor in there, and we had to kind of cut that out. But the Bear and the Beaver are Dom DeLuise and Charles Nelson Riley in there, which just gives me so much joy to think they're performing there more times than in their entire career. I mean, more people per hour hear them do a show than.
After this, you then enter into the amphitheater, where you see people in cardboard cutout watching a movie of Dudley Do-Right and an introduction on what the attraction is based on. And I think they did it pretty well. The voice actors for the characters was Dudley Do-Right, played by Keith Scott. It wasn't the only voice he played in Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls, as he also played Inspector Fenwick in the attraction. Another voice actor was June Foray, who played the sweet girl Nell, Fenwick. Also, this would be her final role playing as Nell, before she passed away on July 26, 2017. And playing that dastardly villain himself, Snidely Whiplash, voiced by Curry Burton. Yes, his most famous work is Louis Von Drake from Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Yes, that's one of my all-time favorite roles, right? Okay, maybe I'm being dramatic. He also played stuff in Cranium Command as well. Not joking, actually. He played General Knowledge. I'm not making this up. He played the chicken and the male recruit. Fantastic.
This is a figment of my imagination.
Here, let's run.
No. No. God's sakes, man. Who thought he would actually go ahead and play this character? Anyways, moving on. Now let's get back into talking about the attraction. And then you enter to the auditorium, where you're entering into the loading station as you enter into your log. In some concept art, there actually would have been 2 seater rows, but somehow in development, they decided to go with the one-seater, which is pretty odd. Also, the logs was originally designed to look like a log, with brownish color, before going with a red and yellow type design, so that way it doesn't look like Splash Mountain to some people. Smart on their behalf. So, I do need to mention something, and it might blow people away, but did you know that Dudley Do Right Ripsaw Falls logs had no lap bars at all? As a matter of fact, that was the case in 1999, and primarily, people would have to sit in 6 rows, with people having to put their legs on the other person's leg to hold them in place. And I'm not joking. This is evident in videos and as well as advertisement as well. Constantly, people would have to use the metal bars to hold on to drops in the attraction. However, in 2006, an incident occurred involving a woman that apparently shattered her tailbone due to her being launched up out of her seat for the final drop. Due to this, they decided to add lap bars on the attraction due to safety concerns. Not to mention, but they also had to reprogram or reconfigure the entire drop for the final plunge due to that incident. This wasn't the first incident of this, as 4 years prior, a similar incident occurred in March 15, 2000. What happened in the summer of 1999, involving a Georgia woman that was injured by the final drop, and primarily closed for maintenance. The Georgia woman decided to file a lawsuit in State Circuit Court in Orlando that she was hurt by what exactly? This is not an intermission. This is literally what it says here. Will, nope. Will the lawsuit, what did I just say? Nope. We are going to keep moving forward, narrator, and act like nothing ever happened. But do I get my money back? Yeah, you can get you got your money back. Here's your money. That would be the best, in my opinion. Also, one more thing about the auditorium room. For the loading station, for the upstairs view, there would be more of the queue line, spreading out, but they decided to stop doing it because people will literally drop water bottles on top. So with this, it was blocked off, as well as getting rid of the rails. As now you're entering into the log, and your adventures with Dudley begins. As you're entering into the melodrama. Fun fact about the attraction, there's actually references of classic Disney attractions on this ride, which I think is pretty hilarious. One of them, in the first scene, is a parody of Splash Mountain, and trust me, they certainly got some inspiration from Splash Mountain while making this attraction. In it contains a beaver, a bear, with party hats. This is in the effects apartment room. Also, on top, you'll see cats walking up on the wood. But then, Snidely Whiplash has officially kidnapped Nell, with now a hole on the door leaning on where they went. In the scene, there are a few dialogue in the scene.
Snidely Whiplash, untend me.
But Nell, I love you, and I'm pretty fond of kidnapping you too.
Oh, Dudley, save me.
Stop struggling, Nell. You know I have a bad back.
Unturn me, you fiend!
Flattery will get you nowhere.
Now, you hear a trumpet playing, as it shows on the right-hand side a Dudley Do-Right and Horse animatronic, as they're trying to save Nell. Also, I kind of actually realized something. The backdrop actually moves in the back when they move, which is kind of fascinating. Hip hip hooray. Then you enter to the first lift hill, and on your right-hand side, you'll see Snidely Whiplash with Nell Fedwick on his back with a minecart. After you're done going up the lift hill, you then turn to the right-hand side where you see Dudley Do-Right and his horse on a canoe, seemingly like they're lost. However, Snidely Whiplash has a plan, this time letting go a giant rock, which is somehow a reference to Snow White's Scary Adventures over at the Magic Kingdom. Then, now you enter into a cave where all of a sudden a bear comes out between Dudley Do-Right and his horse, being shocked, and of course Dudley holding on it to a candle. Then we see that Snidely Whiplash tied Nell along with his horse, and of course Inspector Fedwick. Then you enter to pitch black darkness until Dudley says, "Horse, I think I lost my train of thought." All of a sudden, a full-on sound of the train coming overhead. Also, this is a parody of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at the Magic Kingdom and Disneyland. And then you enter to the first drop. After that's over, you then see Dudley Do-Right and his horse stuck into a log and trying to get out. After that, you enter to a log cutting factory with Nell tied into a log, with both Dudley and Snidely Whiplash, as they are playing tag of war with the lever.
Give up, Whiplash! Mount is first, all right. A mountain never gives up.
What about a short recess?
Hang on, Nell. Let go, Do-Right.
And then you're entering into the second drop. Then you'll suddenly see jokes of signs all over the place. Through that, you then enter into the lift hill, with you actually getting soaked with water coming down of you. Also, on the left, you see the horse drinking all the water. Very clever, Universal, very clever. But apparently it seems like Dudley's head is stuck. Poor Dudley. Then you're now entering into Snidely's Crossfire, with Snidely Whiplash and Dudley Do-Right holding water guns and spraying at guests. Then now puts Snidely on a cannon, shooting up, crashing into a building. Also on the left-hand side, you see clothing on a hanger, spinning. Also on the right, it appears there's also a scarecrow, but then Dudley Do-Right, after an applause, accidentally hits a TNT trigger. Then you either go to the left or right side, and this is the part where the splitting the boats in half gag would have been, with a full-on saw in the front. But it was definitely very far in development, that's for sure. And then you enter to the final drop, which is about 75 feet tall, and it's 50 miles per hour. And then you drop down into the house shack, which actually has a lot of sensors, but however, over time, the house shack began to show its age, since this attraction opened in 1999, and some of the effects are not working as planned. And plus, it was the most complex thing on the attraction. After getting so much drenched from that wild experience, Then you see to your right, and also if you're on the right hand side to your left, you see Snidely Whiplash in jail, as Snidely is trying to make the Beaver a deal by giving him the key, which is a parody of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Then it's time for a celebration with a big banner up front as you see Dudley Do-Right being very much congratulated, with, of course, Inspector Fedwick congratulating him, and the horse is being kissed by Nell. Believe it or not, fun fact, there would have been actually a way different ending. In the Gary Goddard phase in development, the ending would have been kind of like the intro to the Dudley Do-Right Canadian Mountie segment, where Snidely Whiplash is tied up, but Dudley Do-Right is waving to all his fans for saving the day, once again without credit from Nell. Fortunately though, this was shelved. The original ending scene for the ride would have had an indoor portion, which contains the animated figures that we ultimately got, but with Snidely Whiplash out of jail and opening a prop door to finish the melodrama, personally, this is really awesome. While we don't know why this scene was cut, it might be due to possibly having the expense of everything else, which led to the budget cuts, so the scene would be altered and changed. This led to the same animated figures from before, but with a different background. Instead of taking place in a theater setting, it's now taking place in Inspector Fedwick's office, the RCMP, with the animated figures outside the building, with wooden structures all around it, with Snidely Whiplash also being added in the scene, as he opens the window outside of the office. Like the last ending, this likely got into a couple of budget cuts again. After that though, the narrator says,
And so our hero proves a Mountie always gets his man, but not always his girl.
That, my friends, is Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls in a nutshell. Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls has a huge success and immediately became one of the best log flume water rides on the planet.
But then we got to Ripsaw Falls, where we had that conversation with that engineer that we had to kind of build a truce together to understand we both needed to kind of push the edges but keep everyone safe. Once you let an engineer's imagination released, there is no stopping. There is no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. They start being very creative, which is wonderful. It frees the engineers, and that collaboration is great. But this combination between a coaster and a flume ride is what we call this aqua coaster. And so we went higher than Splash Mountain. So Splash Mountain was the ride to be, and we did. And so the thing is that, okay, well, you go through all these little kind of, Splash Mountain is like a lot of dark rides. And you're going through all these like window displays. Here's this scene and here's that scene. And I see that as so totally anticlimactic. And then you have the thrill. You need to work with that visceral storytelling throughout the whole ride. And then when you get to something visual, you calm down the visceral. But if you have something verbal, that a line of saying, I'll get you, Snidely, and I'll save you now. You had to be able to kind of, orchestrate it and work the balance. When you're going through Ripsaw Falls, what you see is a big attraction. You see this big, huge fall like Splash Mountain, and you're always anticipating that. So throughout the whole ride, we have all these false, expectations of, oh, here it is, and give them something else. Thing. But so what happened is that we did all these what we call head fakes. We think that we're going to do what we're not. And so that kept it going. So you had a kind of a double visceral feel to that. And so that was all these things that is a part of the storytelling that was working this cartoon language of what do you do? What are the expectations? What are not the expectations? How do you work with them and against them? And in the smallest moments, in the broadest kind of gesture, and have each of those moments timed and triggered in the right way. And so Ripsaw Falls, I have to say, I'm very proud. of my whole team, particularly Steve Ludwig, who was a production designer for Ripsaw Falls. God rest his soul. That Ripsaw Falls was the best in the world attraction in its class for longer than Spider-Man. So we beat Spider-Man in one way, even though that was everyone's favorite. But for 13 years in a row, that was the best water ride in the world. So that won the Magic Golden Ticket Awards and so forth.
And got the Magic Golden Ticket Awards for Best Water Ride in the world for 13 years. I'm not joking. 13 years. Not Splash Mountain, not Timber Mountain at Knott's Berry Farm, not Area 51 Top Secret. Heck, not even Jurassic Park River Adventure, which is sort of shocking to say the least. The reviews of this water ride was very successful, to the point that Chris Stapleton said, an attraction in its class for longer than Spider-Man. Yeah, I'm not making this up. However, some did find it pretty rough, especially in all the drop sequence, even when it was first opened. Unfortunately, Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls had a huge incident that occurred in 2011, with a massive fire broke out, and many people got evacuated out of the park very safely. Thankfully, no one was hurt, and of course, no one allegedly died, thank God. But there was some damage from the fire, so it was officially been restored, although they believe the reasoning of the fire was because of an electrical problem from the air conditioner unit. Might be the culprit of this incident. Now, how do these logs get back, you may be asking? Well, there is a hole leading into the back, into the loading station, as seen here. Also, one more thing for Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls. Here's the baby swap room. Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls is generally a beautiful and well-crafted attraction. They definitely nailed Jay Ward's colorful design that's so recognizable for fans of Rocky and Bullwinkle, including myself. Chris Stapleton definitely had a vision for this attraction. It was not only poking fun of the mouse down the road, but also giving something of a ride value. Any attraction deserves a ride value, and this one does. Ripsaw Falls offers a story done in a way that brings you into the story of these characters. Well, it is easy plot to understand. Sometimes a simple plot is always needed, especially this one. The team for this project knew that they had to please Jay Ward Productions, but ultimately the final product is relatively spot on. Even though the team had some facing with budget cuts, it still pulled off very nicely for the budget that was given. Honestly, this water ride deserves so much more than it already is, and they absolutely nailed the assignment they were given, but it's really a gold mine of creativity from Universal that no one ever takes their time to look. This would be the only e-ticket attraction that would be associated to the property Jay Ward. This is the only attraction of its kind, and it's a good one, and it's a legacy attraction at Islands of Adventure. That's for sure.
Popeye and Olive Snow Globe, $15.
Oh, yeah.
Popeye Shot Glass, $4.99. Yeah! Knowing what Popeye really smokes in his pipe, weed, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard.
Now, we are moving away from the Canadian Mountie next door, as we head to the town of Sweethaven, where Popeye characters live. This will be the final section of Toon Lagoon that we're going to be talking about, and boy, it's an interesting one for sure. The story starts out all the way back in 1992, while they were making Project X, Popeye was in the cards. The land would be originally called Popeye's Island, and would have actually split into two sections, Sweethaven and the Docks. All of this was created by Landmark Entertainment Group. Let's first start off with Sweethaven, which includes an attraction called Popeye's Adventure. In this indoor attraction, guests would start out in a peaceful boat tour through the village. Everything was fine until the villain kidnapped Popeye and his friends, forcing us, the guests, to go and rescue his gang of friends. However, this would unfortunately never come to reality, but Sweethaven did come to reality. In Trademark on November 1st, 1994. Now, the Docks would have a restaurant called the Rough House Cafe, which include a full-on dinner show that would be a direct inspiration of the Hoop-Dee-Doo musical review at Walt Disney World. And it would also have sailors performing amazing acrobats and a whole lot of singing, and as well as dancing, all themed as they shanty made from old boat parts that would somehow found lying around. Unfortunately, though, this idea was also shelved. Another attraction that was unfortunately never came to be would be Sweet Pea's Schoolyard, where kids can go on Sweet Pea's ship, as well as maybe riding on spring riders or sliding down the slides. Also, I've seen this before, somewhere. I don't know where. Oh well, maybe I'm hallucinating. But sadly, this never came to be, unfortunately. Now, let's talk about the land now itself, of what it looked like in 1999, as well as also getting more details into the attractions. Let's start off when guests first enter into the area. You're greeted with this Popeye statue, with him holding a steering wheel, which is, I think, looks very peak. The full statue was definitely hand-painted and entirely made out of clay model material. After that, you enter to the bridge, where you're leading to your right, you see Wimpy's, based on the character from Popeye. Apparently, it would not be a quick service eatery, but instead, it would have actually been a restaurant, simply called Wimpy's Burger. But this would be changed through budget cuts. But we still got the idea, sort of. But then, it would just simply be called Wimpy's. The menu includes onion rings, cheeseburgers, curly fries, to even Dole Whip, pineapple sorbet, and of course, beer and drinks. And that's just pretty much it. I do like how they added this table here with a ton of cheeseburgers on the plate. That's a nice touch. Now, let's talk about Me Ship the Olive. Now, originally it was supposed to be Bluto's ship play structure, but however, this would be changed to Olive Oil ship play structure, which has a lot of interesting activities. You can also spray guests with water while they're on the water ride. There's actually a piano that you can actually play. If you do it right, a familiar song plays. Also, for the exterior lighting for Sweethaven, which includes Environmental Lighting Associates, Luminaire Manufacturing, Hydril Ultraman, Bega, Columbia, Tokestar, McPhilbin, Architectural Cathode, Times Square, ETC, Mole Richardson, Roscoe, and last but certainly not least, RLH Enterprises. But now, let's talk about the main purpose of the Popeye, the water raft ride. Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges. The story with this attraction was that this would be a part of the docks. The original name of the attraction would have actually been called Bluto's Bill Trap Barges, but then later decided to change it to add Popeye in the name, due to guest confusion. And also, the rafts would be very different from the Cartoon World concept, since they were mainly a bit yellow from what I'm seeing. And another thing is that they were changed again with a different color scheme, and then they roll to what they have with a more cheap look. Their original plans for this attraction was to have a 15-foot drop at the end of Bluto's Boat Wash, which I think sounds like a pretty great idea. However, this was likely due to budget cuts, which is fairly disappointing. Just like with Dudley Do-Right Ripsaw Falls, with its testing of its ride vehicle, the same also applies with Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges. However, one of the tests had an unfortunate incident that occurred in Texas, where a 12-passenger raft was flipped over, and it was by another attraction, which unfortunately killed the people riding it. And I feel very sorry for that day that this occurred. Anyways, testing for the rafts began to be more smoothly until they had to fix the rock work, since they didn't want guests to get hit on one of the seats. Then they turned around since they had to trim it so that way it's safe for all guests. Kevin Kelmberger would be responsible as a ride engineering manager, and helping out with the animatronics would be done by ABG Technologies and Wired Studios. For the voice actors for Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges would be Popeye played by Keith Scott, Olive Oyl is played by Sandy Fox, and the Big Bad Bluto, it's played by none other than Keith Scott. And of course, Chris Stapleton would be a show producer of this attraction, along with Dudley. The question is, why did they choose Popeye? Well, Chris Stapleton said, quote, Popeye, a sailor. His character was perfect for theming of a boat ride. Speaking of Chris Stapleton decided to go through America to find raft ride installations to try to examine the research for the raft rides, and found a conclusion.
We were able to travel like 3 different states and 4 different rides in one day with my ride engineer. We would run into the park, do the raft ride, get out, have a change of clothes in the trunk, change it out, run to the next one, and we just had to do yes, we were on a schedule. We had to experience everything, and we realized came back is they're so freaking boring. They look exciting, but they didn't do it. What didn't they do? We had a round raft ride, so we had to design it to spin. Now, why is spinning important? Well, spinning's fun, but what's most important is related to Vegas. Roulette, it spins, it's round. And so when you get wet, basically people says, well, it's a water ride and we're getting wet. So the more we get wet, the more fun will they have. And I said, no. I mean, that's what everyone else does. And they get it wrong. It's not how wet you get, it's how you get wet.
His first was, it's not how wet we get, but how we get wet. Another note he made was changes in velocity, not speed itself, make the rapids rides most effective. Another thing that he knew was that the rafts have to spin as much as possible, and every guest on board should know when it's their turn to get wet. Another thing about whitewater raft rides, don't really offer much dramatic vertical movement. Thus, the boats typically float along the level of that horizon. No, not that horizon. Stapleton also wants his rabbits to generate severe changes of the boat lift, as well as angle. Super elevations for how much as 3 feet off the horizontal, which would give the rapids to produce even more to make it a rapid run. He found out a major letdown with the idiosyncratic placement of the lift hill. The normal climb usually happens at the end of the raft ride, and Chris Stapleton wanted to determine the lift built to work thematically in the climax into the drama setting of Popeye. There was also supposed to be an original final post lift section, which went through several design changes and development. For the ride manufacturer, it would be Bar Engineering, who've made whitewater rapid rides, and they first approached them on creating the barges in early of 1996, and they helped provide the hydraulic, structural, mechanical, and as well as the electrical engineering services. The attraction would cost $30 million. So his mind struck, why not we go ahead and make a thrill raft ride where you are completely drenched, and so that idea would somehow come to reality. The full course length is at 2,000 feet, and the top speed is at 16 feet per second. Construction began on the attraction around 1997. This attraction also opened for previews and opened in 1999. Apparently, Chris Stapleton said that this is the most wettest ride in all of Islands of Adventure, which might be accurate. But let's get right into this attraction. First, you enter to the queue, where you see posters of Popeye characters. Next, you go through Popeye's Paradise cruises, and then you'll see a Popeye's stand, which has a chalkboard, a birdcage, an ink bottle, a flower pot, and of course, spinach. After going through that, you then enter inside Bluto's Bill Draft Barges building. After that, you see a treasure chest, which probably has gold doubloons. See what I did there? After going through the wooden building, you'll see a diving suit. Next, you then see a rope which kids can somehow touch, possibly revealing some sort of character inside. Next, you then see Bluto's office, which contains a parrot animatronic being tied up. Bluto. I think that's definitely animal cruelty, but this definitely describes his character. After that, though, you do see more posters, and then you see the safety video for the attraction. Then you enter into the raft, and your Popeye adventure truly begins. On the raft, there are about 12 seats per riders, which I believe helps a lot more with the capacity on busy days. Now, let's get right into the attraction itself. You first enter into a little drop over the bridge, on top of the bridge. After that, though, you then see Bluto, who has unfortunately moved the signs, and also Olive Oyl pops up of the barrel, screaming, "Popeye, help." After that, though, you then see on top of the concrete structure, we see Popeye and Bluto pulling onto Olive Oyl. Now, this separate animatronic hasn't really been back since 2019. I don't know the reasoning into why this animatronic scene was removed, but if I had to guess, it might be due to because maybe the animatronics were not working, or maybe because that maybe it isn't acceptable today. Whatever the reason it might be, the animatronics have not been back, and the evidence of the scene still there is on top of the structure. And of course the audio, which we really do not have in clear version. So I'm just going to use video, which your name will be credited for. After that, you then go through a couple of humps before you then see a ship with water coming out of the side. Sometimes it does work, and other times it's not. It depends on how cold it is, of the weather. I'm not 100% sure. Then you go through Me-Shipped Olive. Now sometimes you are going to get wet with the water machine guns. Then we see a pipe, which does spray out water. Next, you see Bluto on his ship, with Bluto shooting a cannon at Guess. But just think you're out of getting wet. Oh, haha, you're wrong. As then you're entering into the cave, with water spraying on you, telling you that you're going to get soaked today, no matter what. Then you go through the cave. When then you see Popeye getting tangled up by a 15-foot wide animatronic octopus, with one of the tentacles having baby Sweet Pea, which he is trying to give Popeye the spinach. What a nice baby he is. And here's a fun fact you didn't know about the octopus. This animatronic used to move a lot more, with his eyes moving, his tentacles, and as well as Popeye as well in the scene. But however, over time, the animatronic would start to show its age, and parts of it are pretty rare to come by, so it was aired down. While not confirmed, AVG Technologies doesn't exist anymore, so finding parts for these animatronics specifically are going to be very difficult to find. Plus, they also had to empty out the water to fix the mechanics of the figure, which is even more of a hassle. This is most likely the most complex figure of the ride. Next, you see Olive Oil avoiding Bluto to kiss her. Smart on her behalf. Next, you see Bluto's boat wash, with an animatronic Bluto controlling the lever on top. After that though, you then see water hoses spraying you with water, with also pipes having holes in it revealing water. Great. After that though, you then see Popeye, who seems like he's really spinning on some spinach. I guess it kind of rhymes, right? But anywho, Popeye is spin around on some sort of green thing, which I can't really point out. But on the right of that, we see Olive Oil on some sort of washing machine, as she spin around once it functions. But however, Sweet Pea has saved the day, with him holding the spinach. After that, though, you've entered into Little Drop, which gets some of the other guests wet. And then you enter to more hums after that. Though, you then see Popeye as well as Baby Sweet Pea as he gives Popeye the spinach he needs to defeat the predator, Bluto. And then, in the next scene, Popeye decides to launch him up in the air. And as you could see, his boat sank, which then landed stuck on a water tower. And apparently, you get soaked on his pants. The final scene has Popeye and Olive Oil getting reunited, with Olive Oil spraying water out of her mouth. Also, in the refurbishment, why did they have to change Popeye's face? And also, why is his pupil small? It's actually kind of creepy. I'm not going to lie. Here's the original look. And then here is today. super, super weird. And that was Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges in a nutshell. Also, here's a fun fact. Did you know that Rosie O'Donnell also went on this attraction? I know, it sounds like a random topic, but for her episode on Islands of Adventure, Rosie O'Donnell and her friend, Colin, both decided to go on the attraction. And let me just tell you, they got soaked. However, there was one incident that was occurred. Remember what I said about how Dudley Do-Right also caught on fire? Well. It seems like the other water ride also caught on fire in 2021. Surprisingly, no injuries were occurred, and the firefighters would quickly go ahead and put out the fire, and it was very quickly too. Turns out it was a construction worker overfilling the fuel tank for an external pump that was being used to remove the water. Of course, it was eventually closed just like with Dudley's in its fire. Popeye really did save the day. Good for him. This attraction unfortunately didn't really have a huge success like with Dudley did. It still was a fantastic attraction, but unfortunately it did not really rank the high on the Golden Ticket Awards. But Chris Stapleton was definitely shocked that this attraction didn't reach the high levels of uniqueness than Dudley Do-Right. Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges is one of the most unique raft rides ever conceived, and I can say it's still accurate. The only raft ride that is close to that is probably the Cloudy for Chance of Meatballs River Expedition attraction at Motion Gate Dubai. But that doesn't have a lot going on. Even though it does use some animated figures, it's kind of boring. But somehow, someway, Popeye always will fascinate me, and Stapleton's team for this project as well. Also, nailed it. The attraction is a perfect Rapids attraction, even though it didn't win a lot of people over. It is another rare gem to also include and mention. But yeah, I've never really seen a perfect good raft ride, and Chris Stapleton and as the show producer changed the game forever with River Rapid rides, and one of the wettest depending on the day. Creatively, think of one raft ride that actually tells you a cohesive story. I think the answer of that is zero. This attraction also has a legacy and impact in Islands of Adventure, as well as Toon Lagoon. Before I leave off the water rides, I want to quickly talk about how they get the water into the actual attraction. Well, the water goes through the show lagoon, and basically there's an underground water system, and what happens is it pumps into the pipes, which leads into the actual ride, which I think is really cool personally. Now, how in the world do they get the guests out when there's an evacuation for the water rides? Well, my friend, I have your answer. Let's first talk about Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls. There are exits to the attraction. Also, how would they get out of the ride vehicle? Well, it's helped by a ride attendant. Would basically use a stick to control the lever inside of the log, making the lap bars to unbuckle. As for Popeye and Bluto's Bill Trap Barges, that's a whole different story, as there are some different scenarios that could work, and how guests can get out safely. How this works, well, all the rafts come to complete stop and jam in from one another. The ride attendant goes on the guest raft and simply unbuckle the seatbelts on every single 12 passengers that are getting off the raft and safely bring back to Sweethaven. Very, very, very safely. Other times, the employee would simply drain off a bit of the water while not draining it too much when this happens, when the evacuation occurs. But you know who didn't get saved from the evacuation? May you be rest in peace. You were a great space ranger. I don't know why he's there at Universal Theme Park, but there he is. So, the question is, will Toon Lagoon stay? Or will it get replaced in the future? Unfortunately, I believe that the land might be getting replaced sometime in the near future. There are lots of evidence supporting this. First, in 2025, Universal decided to remove the old walkway banners at Islands of Adventure. Why am I talking about this? Well, as you could see, where the heck is Dudley or Popeye with new marketing material on the new banners? The ones that got were Harry Potter, Spider-Man, and Jurassic World. Or, what about the new digital monitors when you're on the moving walkway? Absolutely nothing. Or, how about the brand new entrance signages? I think you already know the answer. As you could see in the marketing material, Universal hasn't really advertised Toon Lagoon since 2015. But apparently, the water rides, however, in 2025 are still featured in advertisement, but mainly on their YouTube channel. They still advertise it on their social media page as well. Sucks we suck. Another is merchandising. This is a clear sign into what's to come, since we've mentioned before about how there aren't really enough Toon Lagoon merchandise, especially in the gift shops. The only characters you can actually find merchandise that are featured in the land is Popeye and Betty Boop, and that's about it. And Popeye doesn't have a full lot of options. It looks like that Rocky and Bullwinkle show hasn't got any new merchandise since the 2000s. With the lack of merch available, I feel as if in the near future there's not going to be a lot of merchandise left of both Popeye and Betty Boop. Not to mention now, it's just another IP that doesn't even make any sense with the cohesion of Toon Lagoon. Yes, there are cartoons, but apparently they're animated films, and not cartoon comic strips. Another evidence of this is that Universal closed Blondie's and the What's a Mighty You store. And Kathy's Ice Cream. And apparently, they haven't really been opening since. Although, Universal could easily open back up these places somehow in the near future. But if not, then this shows that Toon Lagoon may be on its way out. Now, I am not sure if this is true or not, but Unisounds, or Park Relics, on YouTube, reported on a rumor going around from helpful sources that approximately 4 years, that's right, 4 years, Universal is planning on not renewing the licenses around 2030, and all of this does seem to be really informative. But also, on this post that he made about it, someone commented, those are hypothetical beliefs. not confirmed. Which then Unisound stated, this is sourced from emails that went out to upper management. Very interesting indeed. No matter how true or false this is, one thing is clear. Toon Lagoon's future is in a dying state. So in conclusion, Universal hasn't seen a clear faith of Toon Lagoon of being a main draw at Universal Orlando Resort, and probably a replacement might be an occurrence. Another reasoning as well into why Toon Lagoon might be get replaced in the future is that these properties are third parties and not owned by Universal, except for Jay Ward, since DreamWorks owns Jay Ward, and DreamWorks is owned by Comcast, now which started in 2016, which now makes the Jay Ward property by Universal. But, however, they have 50% of that, since this only lasted from 2014 to 2022. And speaking of this, there hasn't been any new Rocky and Bullwinkle material on the Wild since the revival of Rocky and Bullwinkle. So that just shows you right there about what people think about the property nowadays. The current owners now is WildBrain, which is a company that makes Canadian animation of cartoons, which started in 2022. So yeah, who knows what the future holds for this franchise. This means that the uncertainty of Dudley Do-Right's Ripsaw Falls is in jeopardy by a little bit. Now, what about Popeye? The comic strip series is still owned by United Features Syndicate, and Popeye cartoons are owned by Time Warner, which is Warner Brothers. So why am I talking about who owns what exactly? This is because when an attraction closes at Universal, sometimes it can be from a third party. For example, Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time closed in 2017, and Terminator was owned by Paramount, which Universal doesn't own. Another was Jimmy Neutron Nicktoon Blast, which closed in 2011, is also from Paramount, which Universal doesn't own. The point that I'm trying to get across is that these properties are not really owned by Universal. Sure, they have 50% of the Jay Ward license, but not everything else. It's rare for Universal to keep a property that's not owned by them. But that only happens if the attraction is immensely popular to stick around. And as for the case of Toon Lagoon, that was certainly the case. The reason why Universal probably kept it for so long was because of its water rides being crowded on hot summer days, and the fact that many people really love these water rides for what they deliver. And Universal would have actually closed it years ago if the land itself was not seeing a lot of attendance. I'm praying that this land doesn't get the last laugh. But let's be honest here, I'm sure it will get the last laugh, and not in a good way. Toon Lagoon is a masterpiece of art and creativity that was given to us by Universal. Not only did Universal didn't want to give up on the cartoons that made so many households laugh out loud, from amazing talented creative consultants like Chris Stapleton, John Russ, Ray Carlson, Gary Goddard and his talented team, Pat Glados and his lighting system company, and more, on helping on what made Toon Lagoon a worthy inclusion in the park's lineup. of talented art and storytelling. Toon Lagoon is catered to the young and the old, and it certainly shows that very well. But what steeled the show for this land was its carry-out attractions, the water rides. These dangerous, heavy-down machines, as like Chris Stapleton likes to say about it, in a good way, from development to reality. Through a lot of budget constraints from corporate, the land turned out an amazingly great at the end, despite the heavy troubles a bit through development. Everyone was happy to be on board on creating the most wettest water rides on Earth. And somehow, that impact allowed other theme parks to take notice. Even Disney took notice and built their own raft ride on the exact same year that Islands opened in 1999 at Disney's Animal Kingdom. But through all of this though, over time, the land started to falter. A show that didn't last very long and only lasted for 1 year, phasing out on merchandise through the stores, losing a bit of entertainment, the characters losing relevancy to new audiences, through closures of offerings at Toon Lagoon, and an uncertain future, have impacted the downfall of the island. But however, that doesn't mean that we should ignore the aspect of what Universal set out to do with this land, even though it has flaws. The spark of imagination from a lot of developers can be seen to this day, and that is the magic of theme park entertainment, as well as Toon Lagoon. But how long until the tunes get the last laugh? And well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the video. What did you guys think about this video? Was there anything that fascinated you at all? And while you're at it, what is your favorite water ride out of the two? I would love to hear your response in the comments section, because you guys are phenomenal and amazing people. Also, if you want to email me new info or photos, as well as video, about this specific topic, I am very happy to hear your response, and your name will be credited for, because you deserve it. But however, Theme Park Do Right does not associate with hackers as well as spammers, so please do not try and spam me or hack me, because I won't answer the response. Please and thank you. Also, if you want to, you can go ahead and follow my Instagram account if you want to, so that way you won't miss any amusement park content from me. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and smash that like button, as I really appreciate the support, since this video took an entire year to make. Bye now, see you next time on another theme park and amusement park video. Or as I like to say it, bye for now.
You could be out on a limb, flat on your back, tied to a track. Even when pickings are slim, you can always have the last laugh. Ha! You could be thick in the fight, caught in the whirl, losing the girl. You could fight, lost in the night, but you'll always have the last laugh. Have the last laugh. The last laugh.
Next time on Theme Park Do Right, let's go ahead and take a look at an interesting story featuring Pepe the Rabbit and his fine fellow amigo friends, as we go ahead and look into the history beyond musical circus.
How do you do? Oh, this is charming. Wow, look at the bear. I mean, look at this crowd. Look at all these people. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, no wonder. No wonder nobody comes here anymore because it's always so crowded.
What are you so nervous about today?
Well, I mean, I heard that a lot of VPs are in today's audience.
No, don't worry. There won't be any left when this show's over.
Really?
Uh-huh.
It's all.
How do you do?
How do?
How are you?
How do?
How charming.
How doody do.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, I didn't leave.